Problem is the camera's over there on the left. Yeah.
Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me I have Rob Rowe. Rob is from Hitachi Vantara. Before we get started, Rob, explain to people where they can get hold of you on social media.
So I think the best place to get hold of me on social media is to look me up as Rob Rowe on LinkedIn. Yeah, you know, they'll find my my profile there, and they'll find all the blogs that I've done.
So Rob as in so some people who watch this, English may not be their first language. So Rob as in R-O-B, Rowe as in R-O-W-E.
Yeah,
perfect.
W-E. Yeah.
So Rob, I actually did something before you came on air, which was I got a piece of paper and said, this is my list of all the things that we're going to do in July and August, and then I basically screwed it up and threw it over my shoulder because in a COVID-19 world, I think everything has just gone to pot. And what can we do? So I thought I'd get you online to talk about what you see as the future in terms of technical opportunities and challenges in a COVID-19 world.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, okay. Well, this is the sort of kind of thoughts. It's basically things that I've seen going on over the past month, 6 weeks, talking with customers, talking with colleagues, talking with former colleagues, and some of the things that you can start to see that people are already thinking about for the future. However, I will say this is probably like forecasting the weather a year ahead. Yeah, so you know, this video may come back to haunt me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're in a situation here in the UK where the government's basically going on at 5 o'clock every day, and they're basically making an announcement. So today, whatever we do today may be wrong tomorrow, but you know, we've got to carry on living our lives and try and get a vision on a dot in the future that we can kind of focus on.
No, I'd agree with that. And it is interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people getting very, very frightened about it, and I can understand that, and I can feel for people worried about their relatives, their parents, even themselves. Yeah, but equally, I think business leadership's got to take this as a bit of one of those moments where they could make a change. They could do something different that could give them that lead. That is the thing that makes a difference between this being a period of a howling loss or being a period when actually your company moved to being the front leader in a particular area. Yeah.
And if we took we're not talking about all businesses because there's a lot of small businesses which are in trouble, but there are a number of businesses out there which have cash of which they could spend. I mean, I've just read a report from a large organization that basically said what you need to do is stop all spending. And if you stop spending, then that basically all that does is it throws everybody into hell in a basket. And
so you could understand that as a strategy for the next week, 2 weeks, yeah. But I think really it's now about targeted spend. What's going to get you the biggest bang for your buck? Yeah, because I mean, some of the things you and I discussed before this. They're really going to come into effect because if you start to say, there's a lot of advice going about at the moment that's saying, well, the world's going to have to become more digital after this. Yeah, and you start to say, well, what can you do now to make sure that you can actually become more digital? Because everybody assumes that digital is a technology thing. Actually, it's not. That's the easy bit of it, probably. The most difficult bit of it is still the people thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we look at certainly my view is that this is going to be in place. So I'm sitting at home, and we'll be sitting at home probably for at least another 6 months. I'm being asked to attend a conference in June in Paris. I'm going like, you might as well move that out to September.
Yeah.
So what is it that businesses can be doing now in terms of making sure that they're prepared and ready for that upturn that will come?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, if I just took an example, I mean, one of the things you're starting to see a lot of businesses realizing is that there is still a lot of places in their business processes where people are heavily involved, where perhaps there is an opportunity to change that. Yeah, so everybody talks about digital, but I don't think a lot of people really have understood what that meant. And I was speaking to somebody the other day in a trading company. Yeah, and they were telling me that, in China, all the banks are still open. Yeah, it's not like the banks ever shut. Yeah, they're open, but the problem is that there's still a lot of things that are very much paper transactions that need to go from, you think about it, a lot of these things they're deals between organizations. You want something that is the reference, the source of the truth, and to some extent paper with wet ink signatures on it is still a very, very easy way of doing that. Yeah, so there are organizations out there that still rely on somebody picking up, collecting a piece of paper and taking it from A to B to complete the transaction. Yeah. And
are we talking about the paperless office? Because I'm kind of like, we've been talking about the paperless office for 20 years, and what is it that definitely we can take paper transactions, but what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, the paperless office really is exactly that. I mean, you going from what is essentially paper to something that is PDF. But, if you took something like blockchain, blockchain would give you the ability to know exactly where in the process a document was. So you'd be able to take people out of that. So that document would then be tied to the blockchain, and the transaction would be, you'd be confident in where you were in the transaction. Yeah. So you'd be able to get this movement of documents out of things, and you would then be able to start looking at these things more as an electronic transaction, a B2B type transaction. Okay. Because you think about even something like a house purchase in this country, it's still paper, it's still solicitors, wet ink, crushed dead spiders, all of that sort of kind of stuff moving from A to B. It really shouldn't be. Yeah, we're actually now in the third decade of the 21st century. You'd have thought we would have moved beyond that sort of stage by now, just moving towards that paperless office. And I think if you start to look at it, some of these big trading houses will start that. They will start that drive to using technologies like blockchain to make this work, which will then trickle down into other organizations. Yeah.
And what else are you seeing as challenges and opportunities at the moment?
Well, I think security. I mean, security is one of those things that I never understand why organizations don't build it in right from the beginning. It seems to be something that is grown organically and sort of is almost like a catch up. We had a few years ago, we had people held to ransom over, the whole ransomware business, and we don't really seem to have learned from that. But if you look at, say, now, where we're looking for people to go and work from home, you start to see lots of people now taking their laptop home and working in their home office. Now people, okay, so in our industry, it's perhaps been fairly standard that, people use Friday to do that. But now you're seeing whole swathes of the population doing it. So you now start to get opportunities around things like for businesses like offering something that improves the whole desktop experience. What you really want is you want people to go home and have exactly the same at home as they have in the office. Now, I know the technologies are there. It's just about building that as a stack. What people really don't want them, they really don't want that whole bit about I'm at home, or have I done my VPN? Have I done this? Have I done that? When you're not going to get that security, that sort of kind of confidence that your the whole of your infrastructure is robust and secure until you move to something that is much more industrialized than what most companies have at the moment.
Right.
And it's not just about the technology, it's about process and things like that. So for example, I just wonder how many people have got an Alexa sitting beside in the room with them, and they're busy chatting away, and they don't know, there's always that bit about, is Amazon listening, is Google listening, all that sort of kind of stuff. But there's lots of IoT devices now that are sitting out there that are potentially in your home, that are could be part of somebody else's security sort of they could be listening to you. Yeah, bit paranoid, I know, but
I think that it's in terms of cameras on laptops, cameras, baby monitoring, cameras, and some of it may be just as simple as putting a bit of sticky tape over the camera. But definitely, I think people have to think about if you're having a conversation which is company confidential, and it's all going off to Seattle to be listened to by Amazon. You don't know.
Yeah, and you what you're starting to see is, and it's interesting over the past couple of days, I've suddenly started to see, because actually looking at people's faces, we are creatures that rely heavily on the visuals. Yeah, and more of my colleagues are turning on their cameras. We do have a little shutter that you can put over the camera. And as a security device that we've had for quite a while, but the camera, I think off this, one of the things you're going to see that's going to demand more bandwidth, obviously, is people doing a lot more with video. Yeah.
So do you think that's going to have an impact in terms of infrastructure?
Yeah, I do. I think that's going to go right through the whole infrastructure thing. So, I mean, we started talking about this as a security thing, but if you think about it, that means that everybody's going to have to think about it from what is it that's behind you, what does it say about you? You could be talking to a customer, right through to the comments I've just made about, is Alexa listening, through to the infrastructure that you've got. I mean, even to the fact that I'm sitting here wearing headphones. Yeah, there's a whole raft of things that you start to see that become part of it. Yeah, and if you're in a sales or a consulting environment, then it probably does start to become quite important. Yeah, maybe it's something you need to start getting training on, for example.
Is that infrastructure like having most people will have some sort of Skype, Zoom, Ring Central type product, but always that making sure that they've got the right desktop environment, or all of those things?
Well, I think it's all of those things. I mean, it's how companies are going to need to start to look at that. I think a lot of companies put these things together in a quite, they tend to grow them, right? So there's been no real design of these things, yeah. And okay, there are plenty of companies out there that will offer you a complete integrated service, but most companies have, say, moved recently to Teams, yeah. But they really haven't rolled out the training to do that, and they're really using Teams like web conferencing. Yeah, and so making that jump from how do you make Teams seamless, efficient, etc., is going to be quite key, as well as all the issues around: have I got enough bandwidth? Am I secure? Yeah, are my people trained to do it? Because I mean, we had a conversation about that this morning. We were trying to do some whiteboarding. There was 6 of us all sitting remotely, and we started trying to use the whiteboard. We got there in the end, but it took us a while. Now we're all IT folk, we're all quite dynamic, we're quite used to that, but there's lots of people out there who won't be, but who would be quite happy to get up and scribble on a whiteboard.
Well, I live in West London, so I have fibre coming to the house, but there's people that I was talking to in the week who live in the country, and they've got copper wire. They said that they felt that there was enough bandwidth for an email, so text-based conversation, but anything to do with video, and the whole thing just falls over. There's an impact there from a governmental investment in infrastructure, but I think companies, as well as moving over to Teams or whatever, have to understand that there are some people that have got, if you pardon the metaphor, 2 tins and a bit of string.
Digitally disadvantaged.
Yeah.
And it's not just your age. It's
we use Slack to run the company on. Again, that's something that you need to understand how to use, because it's I know we never went on a training course to learn how to use email, but the attitude of how to use internal social media sometimes is, I think, people miss. And you know, people don't understand, you know, how can you run your whole business on Slack? Well, we do. I mean, I have 4 emails in my inbox because we just don't do email.
See, that's a very interesting point. I mean, there's so many companies I've gone to who've not managed to implement social media internally. Yeah. You know, Yammer as a product doesn't really work. Yeah. On Teams, you do start to see people using chat, but I don't think it's, if you turn around and said, are you getting the maximum productivity from it? No, I don't think so. And I think small companies do, you know, the sort of kind of, I worked in a startup 3 years ago and we were really good doing instant messaging and the whole, I mean, we were using Facebook at one point, you know, but I don't think big corporations have got it. And if you start to think about it, if as you say, we could be in lockdown for weeks and months, yeah, that the social element of organizations is going to become more key. We typically try and be in the office on a Thursday, and then we'll go out for a social afterwards. Yeah, you know, it's maybe only half an hour. We've just actually managed to run one on Teams. Yeah, we all got together from Denmark to Portugal, UK, and stuff like that. It was a bit of an interesting experience, but you know, bring your own beer was the title of it, and there was a bit of a social chat. Yeah, you know, but we sat there and I don't know, that we got it going, but how would you bring somebody new into an organization and induct them into that as a piece of corporate culture?
Yeah, I think it, you know, it's difficult, but you know, we have to think in this new world about how we equip our people properly. And the tools and the technology is out there. It's just about making sure that we're investing, and you know, this is going to be around having virtual meetings, having video, and so I've just had a call with a colleague, and he called me up on Slack and said, switch your video on. I was like, okay. And he said, I'm telling everybody to switch their video on. I said, why? He said, because people will what I want is people to start having video conversations and being comfortable with it, because it's not as good as having a face-to-face conversation, but I can see your face, and, you know, things like sarcasm and you know, we look at people's faces. And we get that, and we need to be used to those conversations and doing it in video. And I think we all need to be in a situation where we've equipped our team to have those conversations and be able to have the conversations comfortably with prospects and customers.
Yeah. And I agree with that, and that was the point I was trying to make earlier on. I mean, this particular setup I've got at the moment, I've got a screen and I've got a laptop, so my camera is mounted off to the left. Now I'm watching you on another screen, so I don't think that's perfect, and I'm sitting there thinking I need to fix that for the next time I do that. But you know, if you took that in a customer situation, you wouldn't want to be doing that. So. But is just expecting everybody to be able to design that enough? Yeah, is one thing. So, you know, IT departments probably need to start thinking about that a bit. Yeah, you know, what guidance are you going to give people, because you obviously can't control their house and stuff, but you need to start saying to them, you need a space this big, and you need to do this, you need to do the following. The one thing I would say is that I think the other thing is that it's probably another opportunity for something like the iPad to come in a bit, because if you start to say tablets and stuff like that, being able to sort of like have multiple screens, but like a tablet that you could draw on is probably as good as the whiteboarding's going to get. Yeah, you know, in this environment at the moment. Yeah, unless you know, perhaps different kind of screens are going to appear. Yeah, but.
Well, you know, we're very resourceful animals, humans, and I think that, you know, once people start I spent a lot of time in San Francisco last year.
Mm.
And one of the things that you find out about San Francisco is that the immense, problem. There'll be someone out there that will go, I can solve that problem. And I think what we'll find is that, as we move forward, there will be people that will come forward with inventions that will help solve some of these issues.
Yeah.
But that doesn't sort out my problems today, this week, over the next 3 months. But I'm sure they will. But in terms of what do you see as there being in terms of staffing issues?
So, I mean, obviously, there's going to be problems over the next couple of weeks as people sort of go sick. Yeah, there will be people who go sick. We'll probably start to see. We are an economy that's heavily reliant on people who've come into the country. Yeah, and those people will quite naturally want to go home. Will need to go home. People will be will potentially be stuck outside the country. So, and then the other thing that's going to happen, I think, is that as we've just been discussing about how we see things developing. Yeah, so there will come pressure on IT departments to change, to make those changes. Now they'll have a core set of staff, but they'll still need to keep the lights on in the background. Yeah, and it's all very well saying, "Oh, we'll go to the cloud," or "We'll go and do this." Companies still have a lot of on-prem. There's still a lot of systems being supported. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the IT over the next 6 months. Yeah, as we move into what is quite a different environment. So the pressure is going to come on in quite a classic way in terms of trying to do more with that what essentially could be a less pool of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been eased a little bit. The whole IR35 thing, the sort of they've stepped back from that for another year, but you can see it being a bit of a challenge, and it will be where quite often what you'll find is lots and lots of organisations have not invested in their infrastructure. And I don't just by infrastructure, I don't just mean tin. I mean the things that actually do stuff. Yeah, and the problem with that is that often means you don't have the knowledge to change it. You've actually really got to rip it up and start again. So that is quite a pressure on an organisation. Yeah,
and I think it's also the you mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, which is about. I'm not a technical person, but I was always told that whenever you design something, you have to assume you've been hacked and work back from there. And I think that we've been moving to this. People have been with the BlackBerry. The BlackBerry was the big change from having like a desktop. There were people that had laptops, but it was kind of all nailed down. But you had the BlackBerry, which was kind of outside of the firewall. And then we've been moving things outside of the firewall. And now, if everyone's going to be working from home, that could mean that every single desktop in the organization is going to be outside the firewall.
Yeah.
And that means that, you've got a laptop and little Johnny comes in and gets his, downloads his game, which is basically a game that reads all your data and sends it off somewhere. And so how are you going to protect yourself from that?
So, I mean, okay, so I mean, there's a relatively easy answer to that, which is, the laptop just becomes that thin access device, and you've moved all those applications back behind your firewall. So, you're into Citrix or, some other terminal server. But, again, it sort of tries to, I was trying to say this earlier on without mentioning technologies, but what you really want is you almost want to make the device that you're accessing this on agnostic, so that you move, rather than having the apps on the end user device, you've moved it back, and all of this is just a conduit to get to those devices. Now so lots of companies do that, but that making that change is, it's not just about changing the technology, it's then about changing the people and how people work.
Rob, we've been talking for 25 minutes. It goes really quickly. It's been really insightful. It's been great to get you on and to share your experience and see what's going on at the moment. For everybody out there, I don't know about you, but it's pretty scary. I've got two elderly parents, and they're both in a situation that this could take them out. And I'm already hearing about job losses and. Anything I think that we can do as we're now mature enough as a society to say that we need to be looking out for people. And I'm a great believer that big companies, some of them have got cash. And actually, it's not just about governments that should be doing it, but it should be big companies need to be spending cash, because when they spend it, people get paid, and people get paid, they're in jobs. And it's a circle of life that goes round. So I mean, it's really be useful for you coming on and talking about that and seeing, showing us your binoculars in terms of what's happening and what people need to plan for. So thank you.
Okay, well, I hope just some of these things don't come back, in 10 years' time, somebody's having a good laugh, and it's like, look at this guy in the green shirt. Yeah, look what he predicted. Yeah.
It will do. And, in 10 years' time, Rob, we won't be using keyboards anyway, so we will be using Alexa to access things. So.
Well, okay, that'll be good. I'll make a note of that in my diary. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. Good to talk to you.
Take care, Tim. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.